Alvey.
Here. This evening, our invocation is being given by Reverend Jared Altick, Wyandotte Christian Church. Please stand and remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in prayer. Our Lord God and Father in heaven, we give you praise for blessing us with every spiritual blessing in Christ. You have sustained us and protected us, and we give you our heartfelt love and gratitude. Tonight we pray for the peace of our city. We know that as we meet in these chambers, that elsewhere in our community there are violent people planning to act on the evil in their hearts. Father God, we ask tonight that you stay their hand and give shelter to the innocent. We know that neighbors and partners plan to cheat and lie to one another, and we ask that your Holy Spirit would persuade them to walk in truth and honesty. And finally, we know that divisions exist among us, dividing us by race, class, and politics. We ask that the love of Jesus Christ would unite us as we work together for a better Wyandotte County. Lord, be a shield of protection for our police officers and first responders, and give your blessing on this meeting tonight. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Altick, for providing the invocation this evening. I'd ask the clerk if there are any revisions to tonight's agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do have a blue sheet that's been distributed. Under Standing Committee Agenda Item Number 1, we have an update to the agreement. Also, at the request of the petitioner, Section 9, Planning and Zoning Non-Consent Agenda, Change of Zone Item 3159 has been requested to hold over to February 28th Planning and Zoning meeting.
Thank you. That now takes us is an adoption of a resolution appointing the administrative judge for the remainder of Judge Maurice Ryan's 4-year term. I'd ask Commissioner Markley, the chair of the subcommittee, to make some opening remarks. And I want to say at the beginning, thank you, Commissioner Markley. Thanks to all the members of the committee who did great work forwarding us a good list of candidates.
Well, I won't say that it was easy because we did have an amazing set of candidates. We had 10 applicants. All of them were very good. We interviewed 5. We could probably have interviewed all 10 had we had more time. They're all excellent applicants. We interviewed 5 of those, and we had to, by ordinance, set forth 3 for this commission's consideration. Those 3 were heard earlier this evening in special session. And I am here tonight to make a motion for approval for the individual who came out of that special session with the majority of the votes, which is Brandy Brakovich.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call: Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. Congratulations to Judge Brakovic. So tonight we have 2 distinct parts to our meeting. The planning and zoning portion will be handled first, followed by the regular commission meeting. I'll ask the clerk to read the statement required by state law governing the planning and zoning portion of our meeting, followed by the items on the planning and zoning consent agenda.
We would like to welcome all present to this meeting of the Unified Government Commission. Members of the commission are Mayor David Alvey, Commissioner Melissa Bynum at Large District 1, Commissioner Tom Burrows at Large District 2, Commissioner Gail Townsend, District 1, Commissioner Brian Kiernan, District 2, Commissioner Ann Mugia, District 3, Commissioner Harold Johnson Jr., District 4, is joining us by phone, Commissioner Mike Kane, District 5, Commissioner Angela Markley, District 6, Commissioner Jim Walters, District 7, is unable to be here, and Commissioner Jane Philbrook, District 8. As each petition is called this evening, all persons for or against will be given the opportunity to express their views. If this is the first time that a particular petition has been before this commission, the commission has 3 options. Number 1, it can approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission with 6 votes. Number 2, It can override the Planning Commission's recommendation, but it would take 8 votes to override. And number 3, it can return the matter to the Planning Commission for further consideration, together with the statement specifying the reasons for the referral back to the Planning Commission. The consent agenda is the first part of the Planning and Zoning agenda. Items on the consent agenda have received a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission. Unless there is a request to set aside an item by the applicant, a member of the public, the Unified Government Commission, or staff, then the Planning Commission's recommendation on all items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Unified Government Commission at one time. I will read the list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the mayor will ask if there are any requests to set aside items from the consent agenda. This is your time to stand up and request that an item be set aside if you do not agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation. If an item is set aside, the matter will be discussed and voted upon separately. All items not set aside will be approved with the Planning Commission's recommendation. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of each petition. We would remind you that there are a number of items on the agenda, and we would appreciate your efforts to make your remarks as concise as possible. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. Once the petitioners make their presentation, anyone for or against will be allowed the maximum 3 minutes to state your views. As you come to the microphone, please state your name and city for the record. The mayor and commission are required to disclose contacts with proponents or opponents on any item on the Planning and Zoning agenda. I will ask if any members of the commission wish to disclose any contact with proponents or opponents on any item on the agenda.
I think she's asking.
Okay. Does any member of the committee, you got to read them off?
No. I think Commissioner Townsend, do you have a proponent?
A disclosure.
A discloser.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any member of the commission has had any contact with opponents or proponents of any of these items?
Mayor, Commissioners, I've had contact with both proponents and opponents of item on the non-consent agenda, change of zone application number 3159. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you, Mayor. I've had contact with proponents of A1 on planning and zoning consent and concurrently D1. And I will disclose proponents and opponents of change of zone on non-consent A1. However, I believe that's the item that's being held over until next month. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Philbrook? Thank you.
I will now read the items on consent agenda. Change of zone application, item number 1, 3174, Curtis Peterson with Posanelli. A change of zone from BP Planned Business Park, CP3 Planned Commercial, and CP1 Planned Limited Business District to MP1 Planned Light Industrial and Industrial Park, CPO Planned Non-Residential Business, and CP2 Planned General Business Districts for a mixed-use development on the former Indian Springs Shopping Center site at 4600 and 4602 Orville Avenue and 4601 State Avenue, recommended for approval. Item 2, 3177, Eric Nelson with Family Tree Nursery, changes on from AG Agricultural District to AG Agricultural District for Family Tree Nursery's Greenhouse Plant Production Building at 13820 Donahue Road, recommended for approval. Special use permit applications, item 1, SP 2018-96, Dr. Kelly Mather with USD 500, Renewal of a special use permit for a temporary use of land for modular classroom at William White School at 2600 North 43rd Terrace, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 2, SP 2019-2, Linda Simmons with Cultivate KC, renew of a special use permit for the temporary use of land for storage trailers and a cooler for the Market Farm Training Program and Community Garden at 1900 North First Street, recommended for approval for 2 years. Vacation application, 1 item, A 2018-7, Will Anderson with BHC Roads, vacation of an alley at 813 Barnett Avenue, recommended for approval. Master plan application, 1 item, MP 2019-1, Curtis Peterson with Posanelli. Master plan amendment for mixed use to business park and community commercial for property of 4600 and 4602 Oroville Avenue and 4601 State Avenue, recommended for approval. Those are all items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Does any member of the commission or anyone in attendance tonight wish to set aside any item on the planning and zoning consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items on the planning and zoning consent agenda will be voted on by 1 vote to follow the recommendation of the planning commission. Yes, sir.
Mayor, could we remove A1, D1, and then my agenda got cut off, and the associated, okay. Got it.
A1 and D1.
And the associated, which would be all talked about together. Thank you, Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call: Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia. Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
So can we discuss A1, D1, all associated things at the same time, Mr. Richardson?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So at this time, staff, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. Mr. Peterson has a brief presentation to describe how they're going to accomplish the one stipulation and contention related to the staff report for screening of the rooftop units. I think we have a plan to do that, but I'll let him go into the details on that. There's one part of it that we think will work, but if it doesn't, we would like the authority to come back and fix that with another method in the development agreement if what's specified tonight doesn't work, because we've been working on this. They've been working on it all afternoon and into the evening. So that's the one caveat I think he'll ask for. But with that, I'll turn it over to Kurt.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. We do have a detail issue, and it's
I'm sorry.
exciting.
I need you to state your name
Of course.
and address. Thank you.
See, I'm excited. I get very excited
Yes,
about this.
you've done this too many times.
My name is Kurt Peterson with Pulcinelli, here on behalf of the applicant Scavuzzo's Inc., address of 6201 College Boulevard in Overland Park, Kansas. As I was saying, it is gratifying when we work for weeks and weeks, actually months and months, and then it happens sometimes. We were up there for the last few hours trying to figure out something, and we'll get to that. Mostly, of course, if you have questions about it, that's great, but mostly to get it on the record, just because this is a final approval tonight. But if you don't mind, and it will not be long-winded, Mayor, I promise, just because some of you, I know there was 3 or 4 of you that I saw in the audience at the neighborhood meeting that was very well attended back at the end of the year where we went through all of this, but I know everybody wasn't able to make it with everything going on, so thought we would do an abbreviated version of that just because it is a really important site, and so you can have the chance to ask questions and things like that. So with that, maybe we'll do that preview and then hit the technical issue Rob was referring to. So Scavuzzo's Inc., it really starts with, before we talk about the project, you got to know who this is, right? Because this is the mastermind behind the redevelopment of this very important site, Indian Springs Mall. Scavuzzo's Inc. is a fourth, I always say fourth, they have now the next generation working, thank you, working there with them. So 5th generation company, based right now here in Kansas City, Kansas. While they do a lot of things, their core business model that's easy to remember and understand, and what they would do at this site, is to serve largely restaurant clients by distributing all the food and other restaurant stuff that they need out of their facility. They focus especially on their really niche is the locally owned and regional businesses, though they're happy to help those national folks too, but they really have a focus on these local restaurants and operators. They serve a number of states across the region, but again, they're based here in Kansas City, Kansas. They've really had great success, and Pam Scavuzzo, who wasn't able to make it tonight, is the owner. That's Rich's mother, and has done a wonderful thing with this company. Wonderful things with this company in the last generation. But Richard has taken over as CEO, and just in the last 5 or 6 years has done incredible things with growth. And I'm sure you'll have other opportunities one-on-one over time to talk with him about his vision. But it's really incredible. And again, he's here with us. But with this vision and the growth that he's shepherded over the last 5 years, they need a new headquarters. And honestly, in this market, they're a very, very attractive user with lots of very quality jobs, and they could go anywhere. They like Kansas City, Kansas, and they want to be here, and they think this site can help them accomplish what they want, not only with their food service center, which we'll talk about, but also with their grander vision for what, and some snicker at the name, but I'm telling you, it's from the CEO and the ownership on down, it's the KC Foodie Park, because they're about food. If you look at their website, you see they're crazy about food. So they want this to be the KC Foodie Park, which part of it, as we'll talk about, will be the food service center. So with that, getting into the project, the site, as many of you know, because this is not a foreign site to you, is about 50 acres, the core mall site. It is oriented correctly with State Avenue to the north and 635 running along the eastern side. This foodie park is meant to be, as it sounds, food-focused. Concepts are restaurants, food-related service businesses like food prep, meal prep, potential, though no promise, to be very clear. They'd love to have a small format grocery there. We understand that Aldi's next door, but we think there's room for even more. Possible C-store, other retail, kind of neighborhood retail, and office headquarters that I'll focus on in a minute. The food service center, and then also, again, I'll hit it with a little more detail, a massive solar park to the south that would run the food service center. So with that, looking at the site, let's just go from north to south. So starting up again at State Avenue, kind of call this the first tier, or the first row, I guess. And while there's 3 red boxes there, as we said to the neighbors, and we said to the planning commission, and anybody that calls us, we tell them, we have no certainty that there's going to be 3. There could be 5. There could be, a double there. That's 2 concepts. That's 1. Whatever. The point is, that's possible that there's 3. There could be more, probably not less. But that is the first tier. So we really see that being restaurant focused. So as we have a brokerage team that's out right now, has been working very hard, frankly, ever since just before the neighborhood meeting. Not to be presumptuous. We understand this is the UG's property, but you got to get these things started. So they've been out in the market trying to figure out, especially right now, focusing, actually I know this to be true because I got an update from the brokerage team today, focusing on local businesses first to see what kind of local restaurants, regional restaurants could we get interested. And I think the total was today, to be very exact, there's 6 strong leads and 2 others that are still talking. And we don't even have anything firmed up yet. So I'm trying to encourage you, this is real. So that would be the first row. Probably there could be some retail or C-store, but probably restaurant focused. The second row is where the cursor is here on the screen, these larger buildings. Once again, this is a concept. I know Rich Scavuzzo and his team would hope that some of their clients, and they've talked to some of their clients, again, that are restaurants, would be interested in doing some of this meal prep and other food-related services. But again, I hope this is encouraging you. We have no idea for sure exactly what goes there. The market will tell us. So that's the second row. But again, very neighborhood focused. All the red you see there is neighborhood focused, which was important as we talked to the neighbors and looked at the survey that UG did, a year and a half ago now on this site. We want to interface with the neighborhood a lot right here. Just for context, you all know that's the bus transit center right here, along with the police station. Then as you move to this middle area of the site, this red building is anticipated to be approximately 4-story office headquarters. This is where the office headquarters would go for Scavuzzo's Inc., but just because this is, I actually think this is neat, they wouldn't take up 4 floors. When they do this, the idea would be they have so many hundreds and hundreds of clients that are restaurants in the area that are based in Kansas City, and many of them said, we would love to office with you. There's synergy. And Rich has talked about something he's passionate about is on the first story doing a test kitchen. And they've been talking to the Culinary Institute, cutting edge stuff. This is a foodie park, right? So I could go on, but I promised I'd be short, and I'm already blowing that. So that's what would go right here. As you move to the south, you get to what's called the food service center. This is distribution warehouse, that core business model that I refer to that the Scavuzzos engage in. The dark amber here would be what would be built first. These are expansion areas. This part of the building here is for cold storage. This part is for dry storage. And then this part here that you'll see a picture in a minute is office that directly serves the entire food service center. That, again, is expansion area here. And that is when the expansion's built, this is a service center for vehicles and equipment out in this corner. Something I want to point out about this too, really the whole site, that Scavuzos are passionate about also sustainability in terms of environment and things like that. And so they are right now have the designers, the engineers, and the architects here, nationally prominent architect that has done millions and millions and millions of square feet of food service centers just like this. And they think there's a possibility they'll get LEED Platinum. For those that know about LEED will go, wow, can we guarantee it'll be platinum? No, but they are all in with their design and trying to do that. And the reason I went back to that is it segues to the south part. It's not really on the screen, but it's more UG property here on the hill, kind of that undermined area. There's not too much you can do with it, but I'll call it foundational. I know certain people are nodding because they've been somewhat involved in the background of this development of what we hope to be on this hill. Approximately, don't hold me to the exact amount because the design is happening now, 8 megawatts of solar, which is a lot. That's a ton. And the reason they would do that is because they're passionate about running this facility here, the food service center, on a net zero basis from an energy perspective. And they have Black & Veatch doing our study, very sophisticated, saying, yeah, that's within reach. Now, there's some things to work out with BPU and some other things like that. But we're very confident that will happen. And again, wanted to be remiss if we skipped over that. That would be the last piece of the project, kind of going north to south. With that, there's a couple pictures. I will tell you that in working with staff, lots of changes have happened over the last number of months, and some of them were architectural. We had very nice renderings being prepared that were supposed to be ready for this. So you're going to see slightly, I can tell you the things that are different if you have questions, like we added some color, we did some different things. Take this as a conceptual rendering because, I didn't get the most updated. But this is, your viewpoint is looking this way is south. And so State Avenue would be back here. And the first row where I talked about really aiming for restaurants would be right here. We didn't render them because it's really hard to render a restaurant and not beg the question of what it is. So we just did it. But you know what restaurants look like up along here in retail. And then you come to the roundabout. And then here would be what I call the second row, which again would be food focused, but maybe more service oriented. Could be restaurants, could be small format grocery. As you continue to move south, you would come to that 4-story. Again, there's no final plan in front of you, so this is a conceptual rendering, but like a 4-story office headquarters with that test kitchen and the other tenants from the food industry. And then lastly, you can see on the far southern end is the food service center. And then we get a little better picture since the food service center has a final plan. Again, remember, conceptual. We've added masonry here and color, but you get a sense. Your orientation here is coming down. State Avenue would be up here, and you'd be coming south along 47th and coming around the bend here. And then you would see this. So this is a southwest orientation. 635 is over here. So in keeping it relatively brief, timing is something that always comes to mind. The neighbors ask a lot about that. One, we have, I think most of you know, in terms of the infrastructure for the site, we have been working a lot with, not this staff, different staff, Mr. Bach's staff, on public incentives to work on the infrastructure because it is a pretty big infrastructure project. I believe we're a matter of probably, maybe even, and I don't mean to step on Doug's toes, but I think it's possible even next month he'll decide whether we'll be in front of a standing committee to talk about concepts and things like that. But I just would be remiss if I didn't mention that it's been going on. So we'll see you soon on that. And then in terms of timing of development, once the public-private partnership's done, this gets done tonight, hopefully, then the actual construction timing would be, we described it to the neighbors as the bookends get done first. So going back to the overview. The bookends being the north and the south. Like I said, we're already out the door, being very presumptuous, working on getting this moving. That also includes some of the same users could consider space in here. That's one bookend, and the other bookend is getting the amber area going so we could get that operational in something like 18 months, 15, 17 months, something like that. So bookends first, and then we hope the solar will follow quickly behind. Taking a breath. Our technical issue with Mr. Richardson, and I will go fast through this to make a record, but I don't mean to wash over it. If we can slow down on any of this that you'd like. The technical issue has to do with rooftop screening. And the context was never about it costs too much or anything like that. The high level issue is the idea on the top of the roof of the food service center. This is actually incredible that they do this. Even though there's rooftop units, there's no puncturing of the roof because it's so important when you have that much. It's tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars of food products. And the CEO sitting behind me has 30 years in the industry of managing these. And he said the biggest issue you can face is punctures, is getting moisture into the facility, especially on the cold. Can you imagine that? Going from a 100-degree day outside a foot and getting into whatever, below freezing, right? It's bad news. So very, very serious about that. So we started talking about how can we screen everything so that it looks great. And so again, I said I'd go fast. Well, look, I'm going to go quickly through some that staff has and that can be put in the record, some views of, and keep in mind, I'm focusing on the food service center because that's what the only rooftop screening we're talking about, right? So there's buildings between what you're looking at. Right now you're at 47th and State. Can you picture that? 40th northwest corner of the overall site, right? And you're looking back at, remember, you'll have lots of buildings in between there. But this is taller, so it's why we wanted to show it like this. And you can see on the top, and this is to scale, this is engineered drawings, you can see these little rooftop units sticking up. So that's what we're talking about. And then you get a view over from 635, right, and State Avenue. Same thing, quite a distance, but you can see a little peakage above of the rooftop units, which I'm going to describe in a minute, are actually not what you're thinking in terms of rooftop units. We call them rooms, junior penthouses. So I'm going to skip over that. That would tell you your orientation for all the renderings I'm going to go through really, really quickly. Like, right, we're going to work our way around the building so you can see what it looks like from all the spots around the building. So going quickly, remember the office area that faces southwest. We worked out some nice screening with Mr. Richardson and his staff that will work there. Same over here. None of the big units are visible here. Same thing. None of the big units are visible because remember, it's a very, very tall building. Same thing. Working our way around. Same thing. And then here, you're looking from, generally speaking, 635 directly across. And 635, this is downhill to 635. So you really see how these just do a little peekaboo above here. And I'm going to, again, summarize at the end. Just remember this. So there's a little peaking above the parapet there. And then this is generally, you're just a little farther north, kind of looking back to the southwest. Same facade you're looking at there. A little bit of peakage there. And then this vantage point is actually from the transit center, just giving you a sense for what folks would see. There'd be one unit right now that would be seen. Pretty much the same thing. And we make our way all the way back around. So I'm actually going to show you a picture quickly. These units right here, this is obviously a whole nother building, and that resolution is not as good as I would have liked, but it gives the idea of what a room is. So these rooftop units on top of the building will be totally encased. It's a room that you can go in, and it's made of this is key, exact same material as the building itself, these high-end metal panels, and this exact same color. So in your mind, don't think of when you drive by a building and you see metal and rust and all that. They are totally enclosed. That's the first point. And totally the same color and the same high-end material. At the same time, because staff is staff and demanding, which we understand, we think it looks fine as it is. But the deal we were working out was, remember I'm using slang, but the peekaboos, right, you're starting to see from a few locations. We said, let's go back without making any penetrations in the roof. That's why it's been a little bit of its hard design, because you can't get too tall or you have to start anchoring into the roof. We can go 2.5 feet. This is the detail that we're just kind of getting in the record. About to wrap up here. So I'm going to point out and say it for the record. So remember, this is the cold storage side, the northern wing of the building. So that entire north facade of that will have a 2.5-foot parapet, which is high as we can go without penetrations. Also, on that same building piece, but on the east facade facing 635, 2.5-foot parapet. And lastly, down on the dry storage building, on its northern roof facade, that would have a 2.5-foot parapet. And as we were just going through the engineer drawings and figuring this out, I can say we, because we just talked about it. Professional staff and the design team agree that is sufficient for screening. There's only there's two other things to say, and then I'm done on this issue. So one was the parapet on those 3 facades, 2.5 foot. The second is, if you see, is that an old version? Of course that would happen, right? Let's see. No, it's not, my bad. So see this northernmost room on top of the cold storage. The design team will take that and the unit directly south of it, and they will rotate them so they have a north-south orientation and slide them both back so that they're generally in line with where the second one is right here. And what that will do, right, geometrics, it's going to take care of some of that peakage, plus you have the parapet. Third and final detail that we worked out was that this view angle here, which describing with my words would be looking from 635 from the northeast to the southwest. It actually, this building here, which will be added when there's an expansion in the future, is actually a roughly, I think we said, 2.5 story, did I get that right? About 25 feet? Approximately 25 feet. You're not approving it tonight. So that will be here, which is good, eventually, for this site angle. But we were still finding with the 2.5 foot parapet, as Mr. Richardson and his staff and the design team looked, that there might be some units that might peek over the top of the parapet. So what we agreed on was from this line, kind of the northern part of this first, non-expansion cold storage, go across. From there up, we'll work on a extra landscaping in the landscape plan between now and permitting with Mr. Richardson and his staff, and they'll be evergreen. And we think with that, plus this building that'll eventually go here, we'll take care of that. And as Mr. Richardson was suggesting when his opening remarks, because we will have, we hope to make this work, a development agreement coming soon, we would ask as part of your hopefully motion and approval tonight that you would give authority in the development agreement. If we need to tweak that solution a little bit, we're very open to working with staff on that, as long as, and this was agreed on, no penetrations in the roof. So you can see the sincerity. That's the main issue. With that, thank you. I apologize for that level of detail. That's not always what we go into at the commission level, but it helps us memorialize what we talked about. And with that, we'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. I would open the public hearing, ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak in favor of change of zone number 3174 and master plan number 2019-1. If so, please step to the podium at this time. Give us your name and address for the record. Seeing none, is there anyone present in opposition who would like to speak on this item? If so, now is your time. Again, seeing none, if there are no further comments or questions from the public, I will close the public hearing. I'm assuming you have no additional comments to make? All right. Any members of the commission have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the items as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
That includes the changes that Mr. Peterson made, correct?
Does everything that was just spoken into the record.
Okay, thank you.
The motion includes all of those things.
Thank you.
And the second applies.
Thank you. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson. Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. And thank you to staff and to the team from Scavuzzo's for great work. Thank you. Do we have any more set us? Yes, I believe it was A1 and D1, correct? And all associated items. Are there any other set-asides, Ms. Cobbins? No. Okay. That takes us to the planning and zoning non-consent agenda. As stated by the clerk, A1 change of zone petition number 3159 has been requested by the petitioner to come back before us on the February 28th planning and zoning meeting. Are there any set-asides? Item B1? No? Okay. So item B1, special use permit SP number 2018-19, zoning enforcement staff, is revocation of a special use permit for the temporary use of land to keep 2 storage container units on the site at 5401 State Avenue. I'd ask Mr. Richardson to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. In April of 2018, this body approved a special use permit at 54th and State Avenue, basically at the southwest corner of the intersection there, with 6 stipulations, and gave 120 days to accomplish those, and 60 days on others. 3 of those have not been accomplished. The first of those being that the solid fence screening along the east side was not built. The fencing and landscaping on the west side of the, to hide the trailers was not built within 120 days either, and the site was not cleaned up within 60 days. Subsequently, zoning enforcement staff issued a summons for these violations. The trial was set for December 5th, and the applicant failed to appear in court, and the unified government was issued a default judgment against the applicant. Given that he's in default and refused to appear in court, the staff is recommending that the Board of Commissioners revoke this special use permit. According to the outlines in the code, the property owner, the applicant, and those within 200 feet have been notified. So at this point, Mr. Mayor, if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those, but I'm not sure if the applicant is here this evening or not, but that's Mr. Jimmy Smith. So I would think he should be given a chance to speak, as well as those for and against.
So at this time, I'd ask the petitioner to come forward to present, if he is present. So I would now open the public hearing, ask if there is anyone present who would like to speak in favor of special use permit SP 2018-19. If so, please step to the podium at this time. Seeing none, is there anyone present in opposition who would like to speak on this item? Again, seeing none, there are no further comments or questions from the public. I'll close the public hearing. Do any members of the commission have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please. So this is to vote for the revocation of the special use permit.
Roll call: Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes the planning and zoning portion of tonight's meeting. We'll now move to the regular portion. Does any member of the commission or anyone in attendance tonight wish to set aside any item on the regular consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items on the consent agenda will be voted on by one vote. Commissioner McKiernan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now that we've concluded the planning and zoning and before we move to the next item, I just wanted to point out, and again, I've not had to do this for over a year, and I've been glad that I haven't had to do this, my disappointment that there are, at the end of every planning and zoning agenda, there is a tax status report that it lists any items that come before the Planning Commission where the properties are in arrears on their property taxes. We are not allowed to use that information as the basis for any decision, and we don't do that. But I want to just go on record with my disappointment that everyone who comes before our Planning Commission is asking the unified government to work on their behalf. And if you have not paid your property taxes, then you are not funding the organization that you are asking to work on your behalf. And I believe that puts an unfair burden on the unified government, and it puts an unfair burden on every taxpayer who pays in full and on time. And so I just want to go on record with my disappointment one more time that there are, in fact, items before the Planning Commission tonight that were in arrears on taxes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm done.
Thank you. All right. I entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All right. Roll call, please.
Roll call: Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Vote is 9-0, that motion carries.
Thank you. That moves now to the Standing Committee's agenda. Under the Standing Committee agenda, we have a resolution for agreement with City of Bonner Springs for street maintenance and police services to the unincorporated area of Loring. A blue sheet has been distributed with an updated agreement. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Bynum, the chair of this committee, for comments.
Thank you, Mayor. We're happy to reach this agreement with the City of Bonner Springs, and the blue sheet, I believe, is just the corrected dollar amount. So with that, I would move approval of this item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the commission? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Roll call Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Vote is 9-0, that motion carries.
Our next resolution for agreement with Call Valley Drainage District and the Army Corps of Engineers to secure federal funds. Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor. This one is actually very exciting to be able to enter into this agreement and provide for flood protection for this area that so desperately needs it, and have it be federally funded to the tune of, I believe, more than our entire unified government budget, $400+ million. So I would move approval of this resolution.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Roll call Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Vote is 9-0, that motion carries.
Next, we go to the administrator's agenda. We have a resolution authorizing the mayor and directing the sale and delivery of general obligation improvement municipal temporary notes, Series 2019-1. I'd ask Mr. Bach to make some remarks and turn it over to staff.
Move for approval.
We do need to tell you the results of that sale.
Okay.
So we can go through that. This morning,
Been
staff
through this
was.
a million times.
This is exciting.
Okay.
It is.
Can't wait.
Had the opportunity, the mayor got to see the unveiling of the results this morning. But I will turn it over to Debbie Johnser, our Deputy Chief Financial Officer, after offer a presentation and the results of that sale this morning.
My only comment is watching 8 people sitting around that table is like going to the horse race and everybody cheering for their horse. So here we go.
Well, good evening. As Mr. Bach said, we had our note and bond sale today, so I've just got a short presentation. I'll be quick about it, just to give you the results. And this presentation is for both items 1 and 2 on the agenda. I just wanted to also say that we had a favorable sale today. Our interest rates that we obtained on both the bonds and the notes were lower than the projections that we got from Springstead just a month ago. And so I'll be showing those here shortly. Just before, just to show you what we've been doing for the last month, since back in November, we had the approval of the project authorizations. And since then, we've been working on putting together the official statement. We've held rating agency calls, which the mayor participated in. Today we did the bond and note pricing. We'll close on both of those issues on February 26th, and then we'll pay off the 2018 temp note issue on March 1st. So just a note on the results today. As I said, they were favorable. Lower than the projections that we had been given. Both the projections were over, I think on the GEO bond, the projection was that the rate would be around 3.7% and the temp note would be around 3%. The GEO bond issue was $20.3 million. We received a rate of 3.15% on a 20-year bond, so it matures in August of 2039. We received 6 bids on the bonds, with the winning bid going to Robert Baird and Company. And I will note that this rate is even lower than the 2018 bond rate that we got. That rate was 3.26%. The temp notes were $44.4 million. We have a rate of 1.85%. It's a 1-year maturity, ending in March of 2020. There were 7 bids on the temporary notes, with JP Morgan getting the winning bid. Last year's notes were 1.6%, so we were just slightly higher on the notes this year. This is just an estimate of, or just showing some of the projects that are in both the temp note and the bond issue, as well as we wanted to note that there is a potential for future financings later this year. We had 3 PBC issues that were approved in the budget. 2 of the projects, the adult jail and courthouse, as well as the juvenile detention facility, have bonds already issued on the project, so we're holding off on issuing the bonds until we spend down the money that we've already issued. So there is a potential to do those later in the year, or potentially later if the spending is slower. We also anticipate additional temp notes financings over the next 3 years, as well as general obligation bonds. This is just a breakdown. The next 2 slides are a breakdown of the temp notes and general obligation bonds. The temp notes were $44 million, and we have, of that, $24.1 million is governmental debt, $15.8 million is sewer, and $5.1 million is stormwater. Down at the bottom, we've also broken out the issue based on $27.2 million were projects that were financed as a temp note in 2018. We're rolling those over into 2019 because the projects aren't finished. And then we had some new money that was added into the temp notes. And this is the same information for the bonds. $14 million is general obligations, 6.9 is sewer, and then a small stormwater issue. $18.2 million of the $21 million in bonds was financed with temp notes in 2018. As I said, we held credit rating calls a couple weeks ago. Both of the rating agencies, Standard & Poor and Moody's, upheld our current rating. Standard & Poor is AA with a stable outlook, and Moody's is A1 with a stable outlook. And we just noted some of the items that they address in the report. This is just a summary of our outstanding debt. I believe we've showed this graph in previous presentations before. This shows our total general fund backed outstanding debt for $446 million. 33.5% of that is dedicated with revenue streams that are outside of the general fund tax base. So we've broken them out by their funding source: sewer, stormwater, TIF, sales tax. So that just shows the different breakdown. So this is our financing team today. Myself, as well as Kathleen Von Atchen, our CFO, and Elise Villarreal, who's not here tonight, our debt coordinator, as well as representatives Elizabeth Bergman from Springstead, and Gina Rekoff and Jen Quinn from Gilmore and Bell. Dave McGilvery from Springstead is usually here, but he was unable to be here, so he missed out on the picture today. So that completes the presentation. And the commission action would be to approve the resolution and bond ordinance for the issues.
So again, this is one vote. It's an ordinance authorizing and providing for the issuance of city general obligation bonds, Series 219-A, and is a resolution authorizing and directing the sale and delivery of city general obligation improvement bonds, Series 2019-A, an estimated amount of $21 million. Now we'll entertain a motion.
Okay, before I make my motion, I just want to say great photo, great work on your guys' part. It's really nice to see that such bright, strong women are in charge of our money here at Wyandotte County. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
With that, I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
And I just have to say, I offered them mint juleps and they declined.
Oh.
So we have a motion and a second.
Wow.
Roll call, please.
Roll call: Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes the portion of our regular meeting. We adjourn in that capacity. I now call us back to order as the Land Bank Board of Trustees. Does any member of the commission or anyone in attendance tonight wish to set aside any item on the Land Bank Board of Trustees consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items will be voted on by one vote.
Move to approve all as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Roll call: Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia. Johnson?
Aye.
Kane?
Aye.
Markley?
Aye.
Philbrook?
Aye.
Bynum?
Aye.
Burrows?
Aye.
Vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes our meeting.